Here we go. I'm going to start with the intro music.
Sweet.
Danny McMahon.
Joe, what's up?
Hey, you are, man. You are all over the place.
Up on a Wednesday night to do the podcast for our listeners. We serve our listeners. We serve our customers better than any other Bike Shop Society podcast on earth.
Trying, man. We're trying. We're trying to get into back into that weekly groove. I think that's a good thing. So people are downloading the show. So I think that we owe them something. So I guess that's a good thing. So.
Well, did you happen to see a slight uptick? Because last week I actually tweeted out the podcast and the link, and I was wondering if you saw maybe an uptick or if it's too hard to say.
I think that there has been. It's hard to say. After we had that stellar interview with Ultra Romance, 4 or 5 podcasts ago, our numbers definitely went up, and the day that we post the podcast, we're getting a little bit of traffic, and every day there are a handful of downloads. There'll be a spike all of a sudden from somewhere in Alberta, Canada, or somewhere in England. All of a sudden, someone will catch on to the show, and you can tell that they've they must have gotten hooked because they'll download 3 or 4 episodes. Either that or they fell asleep listening to the podcast. But either way,
we'll take both. We'll take both.
Yeah, either way it counts. So it's but nonetheless, people are down. Somebody out there is downloading the podcast, and so that's a good thing. And the other thing is we have, we've done the show at the shop a few times, and we have the microphones out there, and
yes,
it's a topic of conversation for a lot of customers. I noticed that people do remark about the microphones, and the next question is, what are you doing with those? Or are you doing a podcast? And then that leads to a conversation about the podcast. And I've had people actually subscribe right in front of me. So that's kind of cool. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They open up.
That's Instagram content, Joe.
Mm-hmm. No, I know.
You take out your phone and make a video of them and do a close-up of them clicking the subscribe and like button.
I have to get in that groove.
Yes, you do.
I'm usually standing behind a repair stand and kind of yelling, from over the repair stand, or answering questions while I'm working on their bike. So
how much for a tune-up, buddy?
Yeah. What are you doing with those? What's up with those microphones? What are you doing?
Are you gonna slime my tires?
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm gonna try. Things are starting to get down to a reasonable craziness around the bike shop. So, that's a good thing.
Speaking of slime, was slime the original sealant, or was it something different? I have a foggy memory on slime.
Slime is, I think that's under a category of its own. It's more like that was supposed to be like a thorn. It was something for thorn holes. It was a sealant. It was billed as a sealant. But I believe in some parts of the country it had some success
It was Joe. It was huge. I don't know if it was Cozy's
Mm-hmm.
or Cycle Smithy, but I worked at Cozy's, and they sent me to a few different locations when that Saturday when like half the staff called in hungover sick,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, emergency" or whatever. It's like, okay, McMahon, you got to go to this location, that location. But I remember like slime, at least one season being like a big thing, and it was all you would hear every like 2 minutes within the echoing through the the shop was like, "Hey, you want us to slime your tires?"
Oh, it was a
It's like,
bunch.
hey, and they would have a big sign, and it was written in the like the horror movie kind of script, with the slimy
Yeah,
gook.
yeah.
And it was just like slime your tires, $15 or whatever it was. I don't remember how much it cost, but I remember that was like a thing you did, and then everyone's like, "Oh, what's slime?" And
It was a moneymaker. It was for some shops and some places. It was a moneymaker.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
Yes, it was.
I worked at shops where we hated the slime just because it was not very effective, especially in the city where there was a lot of glass, causing the punctures, not like little thorns and small holes like that. It was usually slices, and it was something something that the slime didn't work very well for, and it clogged a lot of valves, especially like Schrader valves. Yep. And it was messy. It was really messy, so all the mechanics hated dealing with it because it would disperse inside the tire and require a lot of cleaning, so.
Well, it's kind of funny, Joe, because some of those same challenges exist today with tubeless. Not that we'll go back into tubeless, but I know there are valve issues. I just did a quick Google search because I was curious, and I see slime.com has slime products for tires, including for bicycle tires and automobile tires and even big crazy truck tires and a whole slew of products. I still see it. I didn't realize it was still a thing. $14 for a 16-ounce bottle. So
yeah, they're still out there, and I believe they were in the tube business as well. You could buy a pre-slimed inner tube at some point.
But how would you see? I wouldn't sleep right because I'd be like, how do I know the slime is in there? Like I gotta squeeze it out to see the evidence.
It was, you could tell by the weight because it was heavy.
Oh, of course.
You could feel it inside the inner tube. So, yeah,
I'm sorry to take us on a flashback rabbit hole, but I heard slime and I was like, oh my god.
No, it's it's a thing. It's a bike shop reality that we've all dealt with.
But you're right, because it was like a money making. It was like this new thing, and the bosses must have been like, "Oh, this is great! Like, cha-ching, like it's just a new revenue stream." It's like everyone's sliming their tires because like $15 a pop. I don't remember how much it cost, but that's going to add up on a busy Saturday. Like that could be several $1,000s.
Oh, it was easy money, because they sell it. They'd sell it, I believe, like in a 5-gallon bucket with a pump.
Yes. I remember the slime bucket.
Yeah, there was a giant slime bucket. The shops that did it had a big slime bucket. It's a big thing. To this day, people ask about slime. It made a big enough impression. I mean, they're usually older people. People in their 50s and maybe early 60s. People that have been riding for a long time will still ask about slime.
Just like I did. There you go. So it wasn't snake oil though. It actually worked and served a purpose.
I think in some places it was very popular. I think in some places
that's a non-answer, Joe. Yeah, it's a non-answer.
It never worked for it never worked for us, and it didn't work. It didn't seem to work very well in the city.
You should be in corporate communications. You're like, for us, it was very popular in certain areas.
I'm trying to be right. Well, there's probably somebody out there listening who at their shop it was great, but I've never had any real positive. In fact, I had a really bad slime situation once. It was really bad.
I want to take that sentence out of context. I had a really bad slime situation once.
I did. I was really frustrated because I was trying to get air in a tire, and it just wasn't working. And I decided to take a pair of side cutters, snips, and I cut I'm like, what's wrong with this valve? So I just decided to puncture the valve and get the air out of, so I could get because I couldn't get the air out of the tire through the valve, through the tire valve.
It was clogged.
Mm-hmm. And so I just decided I'm like, I was late. I was in a hurry. I'm like, I'm going to just cut this valve, get the air out and do this thing. And when I did that, the slime just shot all over the place, including my face. I mean, it looked...
You weren't wearing your safety glasses?
No.
OSHA's coming after you,
yeah,
man.
no. It was all over the whole corner, the whole back corner of the shop.
You got slimed. It was like Ghostbusters.
It was exactly like Ghostbusters. And it was late at night. I was frustrated already because I was dealing with this bike. And
explain that one to the police officer when you pulled over.
Oh, I remember just walking out, I walked over to the sink. I kind of washed my face and my hands, and I left. And when I came back the next day, it dried all over the back corner of the shop was just covered. And it must have been like that for probably a month.
Oh my gosh!
Till I had the time and the energy to deal with cleaning that stuff off the walls. So.
Oh, what a trip down memory lane with slime.
Slime, yes. But, that being said, if they want to sponsor the show, they're welcome to throw down.
After that ringing endorsement.
Yeah.
Testimonials, here we go.
Info at bikeshopsociety.com. So, yeah, man.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. So, how's your week going so far?
Oh, thanks for asking. It's going okay. What are we? Hump day, Wednesday evening. Mm-hmm. And work is just busy and keeping me from the really important things in life, like bike racing and watching the tour. But overall, I've been able to catch a lot of it, which is super cool. So yeah, the obvious, the elephant in the room, the tour. So I've just been watching a lot of the tour and enjoying it. And just having a bunch of fun with it. And it's been great. We could talk about that, but the week is going pretty well. And we're having a lovely, lovely evening. It's cooled off quite a bit.
Sure has.
But the last 2 days were kind of like bathwater. It was just like perfect weather where you don't even notice it.
Mm-hmm.
And then tonight's cooled off a little bit, which I kind of like. I took a little walk and things are good. And how have you been? How's your week going?
Good. I get done with the weekend and I always think it's going to be kind of I'm like, oh, it's starting to slow down a little bit. And then I can work on some projects around the shop, like just kind of lingering things that I've had.
Yeah.
Some good customers have allowed me time to work on bikes and not in a rush, and some project bikes. And I started working on a very expensive build, kind of a higher end build, carbon salsa frame and a new Ultegra Di2 12-speed build.
Ooh.
Yeah. Fancy for my standards. Around the shop. I've certainly seen some complete Di2 bikes, but I'm starting to dip my toes back into the custom bike build business. And
Nice.
And this is one of the first. This is the first one of the first big ones that I've been tackling. And man, is it a learning curve to wrap my head around all of this stuff?
Yeah, I'm sure.
It is just like there is so much stuff. And
are we talking like internally routed cables? Headaches?
Yeah, all of it.
What are we talking about?
All of it.
Okay.
Yeah, all of it. It's like internally routed.
Like the junction box is like hidden under your bed, like so buried kind of thing.
Yeah, like the battery is in. You have to get. Well, let's start. The battery, for example, this is Di2. This is Ultegra 12-speed Di2.
Now is this like brand new? Because I saw some product launches lately, and I didn't read details, but. Mm-hmm. Didn't they just come out with like literally the past couple of weeks or something, like a brand new Grupo?
Well, the one that came out in the last 2 weeks is the Everyman's Grupo Shimano 105 is now electronic. It's now
which is crazy. Is crazy. Oh my goodness! So Joe? It's happened. Like we rode 105 and now it's electric.
Yeah, now it's electric.
Oh my God,
Yeah, so
it's crazy.
it's reached that level now, but so that's probably what you've seen in the last couple of weeks. But this stuff
Yeah.
this is the Di2. This is a new 12-speed Ultegra that was I guess it was announced back in maybe October or November of last year.
Okay.
And it's finally showing up at bike shops, like, parts kits, and some of the online places have had them for a little while, but it's, those grupos that we ordered, maybe at the beginning of the year, are starting to come in. And
Gotcha.
and I have customers been very patient with me, and who I convinced that to wait for the new 12 speed, the new generation Grupo, and it's finally here. But man, there's a lot of little bits and pieces that you need in order to make that work. And it's like it's all that little stuff that if you don't deal with it day in and day out, that you miss it. You don't have a bin full of little bits
Right.
and all those little bits and pieces that you need to make it work properly, and even
Yeah.
just to attach, let's say, the brakes to the bike, the flat mount, uh, road brakes to the frame, so it's that kind of stuff. It's the minutia. It's like grommets,
Yeah.
like little plastic grommets for the cables to run through, where they come through the frame,
Yeah.
so it looks clean. All those little details, all that,
Yep.
all that small stuff that really makes it look cool and, present properly.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that stuff. I just haven't had to tinker with it. The bikes that I've dealt with are complete bikes. So, they have all that stuff. The bike, they basically come ready from the manufacturer with all that stuff kind of attached to the bike and to the frame, and so this is kind of a new thing for us. It's been a little frustrating, to be honest with you, but
Sure.
I guess it's all part of it. It's all stuff I have to learn about anyway. So at the end of the day, it's going to be good. But when you're doing it, you're wondering, boy, do I really want to get into? Do I want to do this? Do I really want to do this? Or do I just want to work on old mountain bikes with cables and external rod?
Right.
I mean, there's a real decision to make there.
Sure.
What I've really come to understand is that I don't want to deal with electric bikes, like motorized bicycles.
Like e-bikes. Okay.
Like e-bikes. Yeah. I mean,
Gotcha.
because I think and I have enough bandwidth to deal with Di2 and electric shifting systems. Like I really want to, I do want to master it and learn it and understand all the ins and outs of all of that stuff. Just because I think it's time, and it's the future, and it's what we're going to be dealing with as far as even a nice bike, right? If 105 is coming electric now, that means that even a $2,000 road bike at some point is probably going to be electric, and so,
yeah. I mean, you could get a Canyon, probably not for two, but pretty close to two, like maybe 25. I'd have to check the website, but like Canyons are probably leading the way, and probably there's some other niche brands that I'm not aware of, but there are probably some other brands, like they're getting pretty close, like pretty soon, I'd say in the next year or two, like you're going to have bikes available with 105, electronic 105 for like 2Gs, and it'll probably be like an 18-pound bike that's got like, aluminum or carbon frame and like decent wheels. And like, that's insane, because like if we had that bike 5-10 years ago, it would have been like a $10,000 bike or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because the people that really need that kind of shifting, I've always thought were
like nobody.
Well, but I've always thought like little old ladies, like having a button that they push and it does the shifting for them. It's like that's the group of people that really needs a button on their handlebar.
It's like when automatic transmissions came into cars.
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, you can't switch gears with the stick shift. Come on, drop the clutch.
Yeah, it's like people that don't know how to shift are probably the people that could benefit the most from these shifting systems. So I guess it's nice that it's finally reaching, maybe reaching that group at some point, or accessible to that group of people. But it's there's a lot to know, and it's funny, there's probably a bunch of people listening who are like rolling their eyes and
Yeah.
there's shop people out there that have been dealing with it for years, but my clientele around the shop there hasn't been a lot of call for it. And
Right.
so
Right.
I just, I've just kind of, honestly, I've just avoided it because there's no reason for me to get that deep into it. I'm,
Of course,
yeah.
it's not, you're kind of a mom and pop shop, but more than just that. Like you have a lot of mountain bikes. You're near a mountain bike trail system that's one of the best in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not just a mom and pop, but I mean, like, you're not like selling like $12,000 like specialized Venges and like, crazy shit.
No.
So, it's like you can get them some of that stuff,
Yep.
but it's not your bread and butter and it's not your routine thing. So I can imagine it's very challenging because the technology changes a lot. And like you said too, with the electronic stuff, and I'm definitely not a mechanic, but like I know enough that like it can be very tricky. And I've heard like mechanics pull their hair out with like internal cable routing and junction box gimmickry and sleight of hand and just like all this crazy stuff. I don't know. Well, I hope you're getting some time with your meditation apps in between Di2 sessions.
Yeah. You know what I did? I went to Costco. And
good. Good. Is that your meditation, Joe?
It's usually my frustration, but it's actually that's how I.
That says a lot about the new Di2.
Yeah, that's what I chose to do to calm down. Was I went to Costco right after at rush hour. So and it seemed like fun to me. So
nice.
That was the place I went for. To relax a little bit.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
But it's it's cool. It's it's something that I do want to do, and if I'm going to do it, I really want to understand it. I actually, we have a good Shimano rep. He's a young guy. He's really gung ho, and I gave him a call, and he's coming down to the shop to give us kind of a walkthrough and a tutorial. Yeah, he's going to come down on Monday morning and kind of walk me through all of that stuff. And
sounds like content, Joe.
Yeah. No. I maybe even talk to him maybe suck him into a quick interview or something while
grab him, grab some audio. You can whip it into a podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they might have certain restrictions on what they can do for social inside the company, but that'd be great. I mean, that would be really cool. I would love to be a fly on the wall, and maybe some of our listeners would be hip to that as well. People who aren't, the Mark Purdy's of the world, like, who don't like do Di2 and like high-end race bikes in their sleep. It's like,
it's tricky. It really is. I mean,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, there's just a lot of minutia, like different.
Yep.
The different, just for attaching the brakes, there's probably 6 variety of screws depending on the thickness of your frame.
Okay.
For attaching brakes, there's just like a lot of little things. Grommets, there's 2 different types of grommets. There's square grommets. There's round grommets. There are, I think I started talking about the seat post and the battery mount. So you need a seat post that is compatible with for hiding the battery, and then the wiring that comes down from the seat post and the different lengths and depending on the size of the frame. So there's just a lot of stuff, and boy, does it add up, because I filled a little shopping cart with my distributor with a QBP, just with a little variety of little bits and pieces, and before you know it, it's $100 of like screws,
just little odds and ends,
and ends, just little bits and pieces. If you 2 of these, 3 of these, some washers, and it's $100. It's like
it's like a quick trip to Whole Foods. Next thing you know, it's $200. Oh, you got some chips and guac, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. And if you're a consumer, I mean, this is wholesale, so this is at bike shop cost. So if you're a consumer and you're having to order this stuff, and and if you order the wrong stuff, then I don't mind having a few extra bits and
sure,
a few extra bits and pieces, because I'm eventually going to need some of that stuff.
Sure,
but I can't imagine being at like a home mechanic these days and trying to do this yourself. It's it's pretty tough, you know. And
Like,
it's also
yeah,
given me some different ideas about like how much I need to charge. You know, that's another big learning in all of this is like how much I need to charge people to do this kind of work. You know, these are not like normal bike shop um, labor rates to do this
right.
kind of work. You know, this is specialty work, and you know, I need a guy to come down and train me. I'm spending a lot of time just trying to figure this stuff
Yeah,
out. I mean, you know, I think our as an industry, our labor rates are pretty low.
right.
Um, and you know, I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, we can't be afraid as an industry to charge people, you know, to do this kind of stuff because it's pretty high end work. You know, I mean, and there are not a lot of people that know how to do this stuff properly. You know,
Right.
they're just not out there. There aren't a lot of people that do this. So there's been a lot of talk in the industry about that stuff. You know, there's been a lot of discussions through the National Bicycle Dealers Association, and there's the Pro Bicycle Mechanics Association that's out there, and you know trying to establish some sort of real labor rate for this kind of work.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, it's like an arcane world. It's just like, it's so specialized. It's not like your old school bike knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I kind of feel for you. It sounds like a lot, and I don't know, a lot of different parts to it, no pun intended. And yeah, I mean, I even see it. I get a little taste of it, not much, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
hang out in bike shops a ton. But like, I do get a taste of it once in a while when I'm in a shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like bike shops, so I try to go into as many as I can when I can. But like even just like, hey, like I told you, my little issue with the SRAM rival electronic, like just a little bit noisy and like the middle of the cassette kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
just like little interactions with that. Like even they're kind of getting into it, and there's like the micro adjust, and there's the good old fashioned derailleur, straightening and stuff like that, which is old school, but like making sure that's in sync with the micro adjust and these chains and this cassette. And like, I don't know, it's like some of it's, there's some high tech aspect of it. And, there's the app and there's some of the firmware uploads. And I don't know, there's just kind of like a lot of things going on. I know that stuff has been around for a while now, but it seems to be getting, and it's not exactly what you're talking about. It seems to be getting somewhat more complicated, especially with some of these companies really pushing, 10, 11, 12 speeds, and who knows what's coming next. And then you got the one by, and I don't know, it just seems like there's a technical specificity kind of increase in kind of what's going on with the good old fashioned bicycle. And I
Yeah.
don't know, sometimes it's a little bit like, I don't know, perplexing and sometimes even frustrating. I don't know.
I know. I mean, I know really good bicycle people, like good people that have been in the business for a long, long time. They're getting out of the business and who have gotten out of the bicycle business because the bikes have just gotten too complicated. You know?
Really?
Yeah, because
Interesting.
because they're pulling their hair out because they don't. We're not. It's unless I called the guy from Shimano and unless I was friendly enough with the guy from Shimano for him to come down and spend a Monday morning with me and walk me through all of this, like I would be completely lost. I'd be pretty
Yeah.
lost. I'd have
Yeah.
nothing but like technical manuals and YouTube videos and, like,
Right.
I mean, that really is, that's the bike industry. The bike industry, like builds all this really cool stuff. They throw it out there, they sell it, they market it, and then they sell it. And then they have nobody out there in the field to work on it, and there's, it's our responsibility to like go and educate ourselves and get behind the get on the computer and read the manuals and do these training modules that they have. They incentivize you by giving you some sort of discount on their product. By like, oh, here, learn how to fix our stuff and we'll give you an extra 20% off of a helmet, so that's like that's their big incentive for us to like spend hours, and I'm talking about hours of our time learning about this stuff, and so
It's so funny hearing you talk about that, because honestly, that was my hunch for
mhm.
a lot of shops.
Yeah.
Because honestly, sometimes you go in the shops, you just kind of know right away. It's no discredit to the owners and the mechanics, but
Mhm.
like they don't truck in this stuff very much. And so when you come in with like a high end road bike, like, hey, I got the new, even like SRAM Rival, even though it's electronic, it's like they're not really used to working on this stuff. And if I have a very specific detail or problem, it's
Mhm.
like I can see it. I kind of get this gut. I can kind of see it in their eyes. They're kind of like, well, and they're kind
Mhm.
of looking around, and they don't have that kind of confidence and training, because, and why would they have that?
I
They don't work on those
I
bikes.
guarantee you they don't. I guarantee you that they. I mean, unless you had a guy, some really gung ho kid in there who's like at home eating 6 hours of tech videos and reading through all the manuals and and really into it, and not only that, but also having the bikes to practice on and work on.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is like if I don't have Dura-Ace Di2 bikes around hanging around in the shop every day to work on, I'll never
Right.
I'll never get good at it. And also a steady stream of variety of them on different
Yep.
bikes. So that
Hmm.
going back to why I don't I don't have all of this knowledge at hand is just that if you don't deal with it on a regular basis, you're never going to get good at it. So I mean, and like I said, there's a handful of
Yep.
shops around the country that see that stuff day in day out, and
Hmm.
but I would I would guess for 80% of the bike shops in the country, nobody's seeing a steady stream of this coming through
Yeah.
where they're experts, unless somebody is riding that stuff in the shop and is just really good at it. Their bike is a Di2 bike, but
Yeah.
I would I would guess that even in a city like Chicago, there's only a handful of. In fact, I know because I've spoken to the Shimano, the guy who's coming in on Monday. I ask him, I'm like, who's really good at this in the city, and I mean, it's you know
One
he
hand.
can
Yeah.
count on one hand. Yeah, I mean, he
Yep.
can tell, he knows them all. He knows them by name, and
I will give a quick shout out to the Pony Shop in
mm-hmm,
Evanston.
yep,
I don't know if that's one you mentioned, but I've had bike builds there, super high end, Cannondale
yeah,
Super 6 Evos, like $12,000 bicycles with all the internal Di2, et cetera, et cetera. Like
yep,
they have a legit handful of folks on staff who can kind of do the stuff. But I think I hear what you're saying, and maybe it's even more than 80%. Maybe it's like 90%, because I feel like a lot of shops they almost feel like it's palpable. I can almost feel that
mm-hmm,
they're kind of like, well, and they're like, I could look at our network and see if others have had this issue. Like that's the kind of stuff I get back, and that's fair. I like honesty, but
mm-hmm,
like with my issue, like a little bit of noise, even with like a super clean drivetrain, like laboratory cleaned levels drivetrain. Like even some of the folks there are kind of like, well, let me ask in my network if others have had,
yeah,
questions about this. And then it almost feels like maybe I should just call SRAM myself.
yeah, yeah.
That's a little bit of a separate thing, but like to your point, yeah, it's a very interesting kind of topic, and it is pretty kind of weird too, just how everything's changing with a lot of at least the higher end bikes for now,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like local shops, because as you said pretty well there, there's not really a sense that, well, first of all, why do you really need to know this stuff? Because like you're only probably going to sell a handful of bikes a year that even require this, right?
Yeah, well, and it takes so much time to really master it. I'm just trying to understand it, let alone master
Right,
it.
right,
And
right.
so that the mastery of that stuff is going to come with time, I guess, and just being able to, if I sell a lot of these bikes, and I get an opportunity to work on this stuff a lot. And now, and we're just talking about Shimano. We haven't gotten into SRAM and Campy, right? I mean, you've got
Microchip, Joe. Don't forget microchip.
yes. I mean, you've got like all these other groupos that are doing electric stuff too. So batteries and firmware and laptops that you need. I mean, this is becoming something pretty serious.
You got to bring like a high end tech truck with you. With all like a whole team.
Yeah.
It's like going for a ride. I need my crew back up.
Yeah. And
I kid, but yeah, you're right. There's definitely this general level of technical specificity that it just seems to be on the increase. Not to overstate it too much, but I think from a mechanic's point of view and a shop owner point of view, again, that's not really what I do, but like I can really sense that. I think I have a pretty decent idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't know where the bike industry is going to get. Like, I don't see like a lot of rock star 25-year-old, 30-year-old bicycle mechanics out there. Like, I don't see like that group of like techie bike mechanics out there who are learning all of this stuff and are going to be the masters of electronic stuff. What I see are a lot of guys my age pulling their hair out, trying to figure this stuff out, and just be like, "What?" Just shaking their heads, like, "Man, do I really want to deal with this stuff? Is it really worth my time? Because I can do 10 tune-ups in the time that it takes me to build this one bike, right? And so, I can do 10 simple everyday tune-ups with my regular customers, or I can build this one bike. What do and talking to other shop owners, some of them do those bikes just for a prestige thing. They're money losers to some of the bike shops. They take up a lot of time. They take up a stand. They take up the top mechanic in the shop, and even though the top mechanic can do it and figures it out and does a stellar job, because he's not doing it day in and day out, it takes a lot of time. It takes it takes way more time than it should, and you're not making you're not charging full your full hourly rate for that job, right? It's more of a prestige thing. It's more of like a we sell these bikes, these high end bikes. It's a show thing so that they can actually sell the $3,000 bikes as opposed to, the $10,000 bikes. And
it's like you got a little cachet. It's like, they could do like high end builds. It's like, okay, cool. But how many people are you really talking about?
Yeah.
And then you have this, not to go too far away, but like, then you have this other element of like, click the doorstep, like Canyons. Like you buy those bikes, they come pretty much fully built. You put the C-post in and the front wheel on basically, and it's like you're good to go. So they've got everything dialed from the factory ideally, and so that's also skipping the bike shops. I think that would just kind of almost add to the problem. Not to pick on Canyon, because I think Canyon's got a great model, but it's a weird ecosystem right now. I think there's kind of a lot going on, and it's I'm not sure what this. I do feel like there's like a big kind of. It's almost like we're saying there's like a big disconnect between like where the big companies, the bike brands are going, the component manufacturers are going, and where like the real shops actually are, like reality check, like real life. And there's like this huge disconnect. For example, like, Trek, I know, and I'm sure there are others, but the one I know about best is probably like Trek has like this, for lack of a better word, this like mechanics, like training school. And I know they bring people in. I don't know if it's just like their managers or higher level mechanics, but I know a lot of the higher end mechanics in like different Trek stores, like they go, I believe, to get certified. So like they go through like Trek mechanic training school or whatever it's called. And I think they go up to Waterloo and they do this like week of training or a couple days or whatever it is. But there's like that element, which I would assume goes some way in like helping them like really service their bikes. But it sounds like that's just one tiny piece in this like giant cosmos of like bike industry.
Yeah, there's not nearly enough of that, and that should be like, there should be a regular dose of that. And I can tell you for a fact there isn't, and especially the last couple of years, obviously, you barely saw a bicycle rep in the shop, let alone like those training, those lessons that they used to do. SRAM used to invite a bunch of mechanics down to their facility here in Chicago, and they do a couple of nights where they kind of run through the product and kind of a quick explanation. But it wasn't really a hands-on tech clinic, It wasn't,
more of a presentation.
Yeah. I mean, and what you really need is that hands-on thing. It's funny because the bike that I'm building right now, if I had somebody who really knew what they were doing, I bet he
Right.
could. I bet he could show me in an hour and a half exactly what I need to know
Yep.
and walk me through it and explain some of the, some of the pitfalls of doing it, or just
Hmm.
the things to look out for, and explain all of that stuff. But
Sure.
when you're left with a bunch of tech manuals they're with some of those manuals, they're trying to explain so much in so many different languages that they don't do a very good job in any language because
Hmm. Hmm.
they're trying to they're trying to get the point across with a drawing. That
Yeah, like
you
IKEA.
yeah, it really is like that. I mean, it's
Oh
kind of you have
God.
to
Oh
oh
no.
yeah. I mean, you have to decipher what they mean and what their symbols mean and
Oh,
oh
shit.
yeah. No, it's ridiculous, Danny.
Oh
It's
no.
and so I'm stuck like you're I mean, you're dealing with a $3,000 grupo, right?
Yeah.
With the one that I'm working on, it's $3,000,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I have, I'm re, like, I have to go to YouTube, and then there's some guy in England, just some guy. It's just not even a bike shop, or if you're lucky, it's a bike shop. So maybe you're like, well, this guy might know what he's saying,
Yeah,
um,
it's usually some guy in like a basement who's like a tech whiz, just naturally gifted, whiz
uh-huh,
kid,
yeah,
crushes SAT or whatever they got over there. And he just loves this shit and
yeah,
he just wants to make videos about it.
mm-hmm,
So he's kind of like mastered it by like self-learning.
yeah.
But I know what you mean. And the video's like 45 minutes long and you're kind of cruising through it and you're like, it's a lot. Like I've done some of that myself and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like this is so arcane.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's the bike industry. That is the bicycle industry. I mean, it's like, oh, we got the video on YouTube, or if you're lucky, the bike company has like tech videos. In some cases,
right.
some of these companies don't even have a tech video. They
Yep.
don't even have that to refer to. So you're
Yep.
like, you're scrounging around, and it's yeah, it's a big it's a big problem out there. And they're making these bikes. They're pumping them out there, and they're encouraging people to buy these bikes. But I'm telling you, there aren't enough people out there to fix these bikes properly. If you're lucky, you find a shop like ours where if I take it, it's because I'm willing to do the homework needed to fix it.
Yep.
And I'll tell you up front, whether I can do it or not, and I'm honest with the customer. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I can figure out how to do it. If you work with me, I'll work with you.
Right.
And people are happy for the honesty, and in some cases, I'm happy to have a bike that I can use to learn with. Because maybe
Yeah.
I'd never sell that. Somebody brings in an $8,000 bike that I would never sell, and
Right.
and I get to experience that. And usually I'm pulling my hair out, in the middle of the night, wondering why I
Hmm.
took this thing, took this thing in. But at the end of the day, at least I get to learn about it and figure out if whether I want to work on that stuff again or not. So
Yeah. No, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. I feel like one of the keys here, and I'm biased because it's my background, but one of the keys here is education, and like
mm-hmm.
there needs to be some bridge, some connector between like where this technology is going and the high endness of this technology, and then also just like real life, like bike shops, because you got a shop to run. You've got
yeah.
Without that, you're already super busy. Like you got X number of bikes to service. You've got, you want to grow your business. You're thinking about all kinds of things, like even your podcast and your social media and like
Mm-hmm.
your shop and protecting your shop. You've been broken into. Like you've got a world of you got a list of things to think about, not just like the idiosyncrasies of like the new Di2.
Yeah, part of that has to do with the fact that I guess it's a realization that I got at least 10 more years left in the business, right? And it's like what's next for the bike shop? If I'm gonna keep doing this, do I just stay at the pace that we have been and just work on bread and butter bikes, or do I get back into that high end game, that building those really nice bikes, and which
Right.
and how what my philosophy is about those bikes, right? Do I want to buy? Do I really want to build these high end carbon bikes? Do I want to do custom steel? Do I become that guy? Do I just do I warn people about the pitfalls of a really high end carbon race bike and all the trouble
and tubeless, Joe, and tubeless. The pitfalls of road tubeless.
Yeah, do I become the curmudgeon guy who just wants to sell steel bikes, really nice steel bikes, right?
Retro grouch.
Yeah, but the reality is, there's part of me who I like rocket ship bikes, especially watching the tour. It's like, I do like that stuff, and I do find it. There's part of me that's I can't deny that I find it appealing. I'm like, wow,
sure.
really fast bike. Those things are cool, and they certainly have their place in the race game. It's those are the guys those are watching the guys that deserve to be using that stuff, who like really need that stuff. It's like really that's really interesting to me, and seeing that tech. I mean, those things look like rocket ships to me. Those things look the things that they're riding and the bikes. But I can go to a catalog. I can go to my wholesaler and buy that stuff. That's not. It's like I could in theory go to the Cannondale catalog and order the bike that the guy that Rigoberto Urán is riding for the most part.
Rigo.
Yeah, so I mean, it's that's the part that's kind of weird, is that that stuff you're seeing in the Tour de France, maybe not 100% available to the average person, but a lot of the stuff you're seeing there is
I mean, most of it.
Most of it is,
especially if you get down to the lower teams, it's all available.
It's all available, and if it's not available right now, it will be available, and
and even it's just speaking of like one aspect of that, like I'm sure you've heard of Ceramic Speed. Like they got this super high end bottom brackets, chain pulleys, the pulley wheels, the what do they call them? The large
chain wheels, the
chain wheels,
pulley wheels.
Yeah, and I think they do other things too, but they have like a whole like dominance in this market almost. But it's like super high end. Like who's really buying it? This stuff is like $500, $1,000, but it gives you like a tiny little bit less friction, maybe a couple more watts. But those things I see on some of those high end bikes, and even I was watching a video yesterday from Flow Bikes with Joe Dombrowski, the American on the Astana team, just giving like a little tour of his bike. It was kind of fun. His nice Willier, and beautiful bike. But he was just talking about like as like a little throwaway line. He was like, he's like spinning his crank arm backward, and he touched it, Joe. I got to send you the video. He like barely touched it, and the thing looked like, I can't even explain it. Like if I go, and I keep my bike clean, if I go spin my crank arm backward, it's going to spin pretty nicely. Joe, his looked like it was just, there was no resistance. It spun like a million hours backward, and it was just like light as a feather. And he's like, I don't even have this on my training bike. He's like, this is just what they have res at the tour because it's so expensive. And I've seen it up close, and they do these coated chains and all this craziness. But anyway, fun little geeky sidetrack. But like the bikes, you can largely buy pretty much what you see on TV. Obviously, they have like some very specialized wheels and tires sometimes, and they're sometimes unbranded and stuff like that. But to your point, by and large, the bikes are really cool. They're super fast and light. Obviously, these benefit these high-end world-class athletes. They're probably not as helpful for local amateur riders, but it is interesting. I do see the kind of gamut, the whole range here, because there is something very appealing about just a bike with like rim brakes and mechanical or acoustic, Joe. Things of that. It is nice to see that. I don't know. It seems like we're going through this big transition period, just like over the past, even like 10 years, I would say, with like electronic and even like the tubeless tire systems coming in, becoming more popular. And obviously carbon's been around a long time now, but it just seems like and well, disc brakes too. So there's a lot of change happening. And like you said, within the next 10 years of your shop ownership, it'll be interesting to see where things are sitting in like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, this is a moment in time right now where like, shops are either they're either you're stepping up, you're you're taking the plunge, that you're going to commit to the next 10 years, or you're just going to allow that part of the market and that part of the bike world to just pull away from you, and you're going to become that, the shop that just works on hybrid bikes and old bikes, stuff without the without all the electronics on the bike. I kind of see shops having to, you're going to have to specialize in that stuff. You're going to, and I'm not talking about, when I say stuff, you're going to have to specialize like in nice road bikes, like in modern road bikes. You're going to be either like you said, one of those acoustic bike shops, and I'm right at that cusp right now. It's like, do I just remain that acoustic bike shop and prides myself on just working on normal bikes and let that other part of the business just go away, just kind of drift away to certain shops? Or do I invest mostly my time? That's, my time and my energy into learning about all of that stuff, in the hopes that I can still continue to sell some of that, sell some of those bikes and sell some of that gear. And I think that right now, given that I see the future of like nicer bikes being there, I think that I have to learn how to do it, at least learn more about it. That's for sure. Give it a try. So,
is there, this may seem crazy, but is there an analogy somewhere with like the auto industry?
Yeah.
Because obviously cars now, I mean, you pretty much don't work on your car anymore. Like unlike back in the day, you do your own oil changes, new brake pads, whatever, right? Like hoses, carburetors, you name it. Like, is there some analogy though? Because like, for example, Sarah's a nice little Audi, and we go to a Audi dealership, and they do all this stuff. But it's like, these guys are super trained, and they're like, certified, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, is there some kind of analogy? Because it seems a little bit like more Wild West. So.
No, the car industry is great because they do. There are like, I'm going through it right now. I've got an old Eurovan, my old Volkswagen Eurovan.
It's a beautiful thing, listeners.
Yeah, it's but it's 20 years old, and
love it.
Finding someone who knows how to work on that is tricky. Like there are mechanics that won't take it, that they know better. They're just not going to get into it. And I know to ask now. And so I've been kind of looking for that. And, there are people that specialize in old Volkswagens. That's all they do, water-cooled Volkswagen, anything old in Volkswagen. They do that. There's those classic car shops, where they only work on stuff that's mechanical, and then you've got your modern day places. And so, they do exist, and they both thrive because they kind of specialize in their kind of thing. And I guess that's the model that I've been looking at. I've been looking at those kind of vintage car places that only work on that stuff, and whether I want to be that or I want to be a hybrid of something like that. And I think it's more of like a hybrid of that, it's, and that's why I want that experience of building, a custom carbon high-end bike like that. Because if I am going to sell that stuff, I want it to be not so much off the rack high-end bikes, but more like custom bikes that I would build from a frame with those Gruppos. That I want to get back into some of the old school things like bike fitting and things that I grew up with in the bike business. More, focus a little bit more on that, and as opposed to selling like a $8,000 bike off the rack. Because I think and I mean that's where the bike industry is right now. Either you're selling you're selling $8,000, $9,000 bikes off the rack. That they just pull it off of a hook, and you walk out of the bike shop with a $8,000 bike. I mean, there's and that's kind of crazy to me. So I'm not opposed to selling $8,000 bikes, but At least I'm going to wine and dine you a little bit before I take that $8,000 from you, and make sure that the bike fits you. And I'll tell you a few
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
I'll crack a bottle of wine for you.
Right.
I mean, that's really kind of what I want my sales pitch to be. I'd love
It's
nothing
not,
more than to sell you an $8,000 bike, but I want to do it right, and I want to feel
it's,
good about what I'm doing.
it sounds to me, Joe, like the vision I have based on what you're saying is like you want to be like a specialty shop. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you want to be like you come in and it's probably not necessarily, but it's probably going to be a little bit deeper pocketed folks. Not necessarily exorbitant, like crazy
Mm-hmm.
high, but sounds like it's going to be more than your average run of the mill person who wants to come in for an $800 or $1,200 road bike. But it sounds a little bit like you want a custom shop. I mean, and it's kind of the dream too. Like I could almost see myself wanting that. Like
Mm-hmm.
my fantasy would be to have like a bike shop / cafe bookstore, have the races on TV, like just this place where you come in and you can just like hang out and do all this crazy. That's just like my moonshot. Like that's just like something I would love to do someday.
Yeah,
It'd be like Rafa in a sense,
mm-hmm.
but like it doesn't have that like bougie-ness. Like Rafa is fine, but I do have to say I love the way I love certain things they do a lot. Like they have definitely like a ton of thinking going into their design, their layout. Everything you can tell is very meticulous and intentional. And I kind of like the conceit of it. It's like you come in and you feel like you're in a place. Like it's not just random stuff here and there. And it's like everything's kind of there. And so it wouldn't be apparel focus. It would just be more like you can come in and, like, are you looking for your dream bike? It's like, let me introduce you to this portfolio of brands we work with, and let me introduce you to some sample bikes we have on the floor, and let's have the best coffee you're going to have this month, and let's have a glass of wine, and meanwhile there's like cool vintage racing happening. I don't know, I just have these like wild fantasies of things I would love. I know that's not exactly where you're going, but I almost see you as doing like a custom kind of experience shop, call it what you will.
Yeah, I mean, there are shops with that model already, and there's one in the Chicago area, but it's up on the North Shore that does. I don't know that they do the wine and the coffee, but it is more like a studio setting, and you go in and.
Which one's that?
I believe it's called Velo Smith.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I've heard of them. I don't know if I've been there though. I've heard of them.
Yeah, and I think that's I like I said, I don't know if the coffee and the wine is included, but it's certainly one of those places where you kind of go in and it's a kind of it's a bespoke situation, and I don't need to do that. I don't need that to be my only business because I have a functioning bike shop, and I don't want to say goodbye to all my crazy customers and the hybrid guys and the the DUI my DUI bike guys, I mean I have quite the army of crazy customers that come through the bike shop, and
interesting,
and I've built like a nice little suburban suburban bike shop, and I do rentals, and we do a ton of mountain bikes, repair. I have a strong repair business, and so there's some stuff that's already going that's great. My floor is set.
Yes,
but there's part of this. There's this part. I know how to do all that stuff. I know how to do the fitting and I know how to sell the nice bikes, and we have a lot. And I think now. Since we opened the shop, there's more of that clientele around, and people are willing to travel from the city, and we've kind of we've established ourselves a little bit more, and people know us, and I think that there's an opportunity to do some of that if we just made a couple of steps towards that, and so I think that that's what we're positioning ourselves to do. Part of that is learning all the Di2 stuff that I need to learn. And, the other part, the fitting, all that, I have a pretty strong I have a strong background in it. I'm updating all of that, just getting hip to all the latest, greatest. But a lot of the essential stuff is pretty much the same. Some of the technology is a little bit different. Some of the fitting systems and things have been updated, but how you do it and why you do it and what you're looking for on the bike, comfort and your hands, your feet, your butt, all that stuff is still pretty much the same. So we're just trying to get back to that part of it, because all these new riders, all the people that have come into the sport over the last couple of years there's I think there's a lot of people looking for that. They're looking for they've kind of dug deep into the bike world, the ones that are going to your future bike geeks, your new bike geeks, the people that kind of just caught on to our sport, the one that we've been involved in over the last 30 years. There's people that are just 2 years into it, and if you think back to 2 years, when you were 2 years into the sport, after getting your first off the rack bike or your first bike, what was the thing that you were looking for? What was the dream of everybody? A custom bike, right? Building a bike from scratch and picking the parts and doing it up. And so I think that there are people that if they're not necessarily in that position, they will be soon. They'll be looking for someone who can do that kind of stuff for them.
Sure.
And just talking to people, I can sense that, when I start laying a little information on them, people always want to know more. And I have had a lot of people come through that are dealing with very simple fitting issues, where people that if they had a simple fit would be way more comfortable on their bike, And so, and I see that, being a really, not just an opportunity business wise, but like I sense a real need for it, and not a lot of people doing it, and certainly not properly.
I think you're right on the money there. And I know we've talked about this before, and there's lots of podcasts you can listen to about bike fit, and books and articles and an endless amount of content. But yeah, it is crazy. It's worth repeating. Like, bike fit is maybe one of the most important things you can do, because it dictates so much else. So whether you're riding a low end garage sale bike or a high end bike, fit kind of it's paramount, like, over all those things. So that's kind of huge. And I feel like a lot of people never get a fit. And I kind of understand why, because it feels like, oh, I'm not, like, quote unquote, that serious. I don't ride that much. But in reality, I think if people did have a good fit, and they were really comfortable, and also not just comfortable, but like felt like kind of fast on their bike, and they can handle it really, really well, like, I think they would just ride more and get, like, so much more from it. But I was just going to say, Joe, maybe you've seen this, but there's an app out there, and I haven't used it, but there's an app, like a bike fitting app. I believe it's out there. If not, it's coming, but there's like an app you can use now. Of course, there's an app for everything. And I'm not, saying it's, saying it's a great app, but apparently there's an app out there that does bike fitting, and you kind of, like, I guess you, like, take some pictures of yourself on the bike, or you put in your dimensions. I have no idea how good it is. But I did see a mini review of it, and I'm just kind of curious where the technology can go. You can never, of course, substitute, like, a professional bike fitter, I don't think, but it is interesting to see where even, something like a $5 app, like, what that could do for people, just like general everyday riders. Again, I don't ever see that becoming, like, ubiquitous, like everybody into that. But there is, I think there's always a possibility. It's funny. I don't know anyone in Chicago, and, I feel like I'm pretty into the bike scene. Like, I don't know anyone who's, like, known as, like, a great bike fitter, like, who kind of owns it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know any shop or person who's known as, like, oh, they're, like, the go-to, bike fitter, which to me speaks volumes. Like, that means, like, there's crazy opportunity. I feel like a lot of it has to do with, like, your presence, like in like social media and like marketing and just like advertising it and things like that. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents, but I do feel like bike fitting is huge, and people would just, of all levels, kind of get a lot out of it. I don't pretend to, I'm not suggesting that that's going to become something that everybody's going to do, because I do feel like for your everyday person who's like just riding a bike around town, like they're kind of like, oh yeah, I don't need that. And it's going to be hard to change their minds. But I think for maybe there is like a nice 10, 20, 30% of the cycling population who would be interested in that and be like, oh, I never thought of a bike fit. I thought that was for like triathletes or something.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky thing. They Specialized try to kind of cookie cutter that thing, and I think Trek has some sort of a fitting system as well, where you kind of go somewhere for a weekend and graduate with a certificate that says you're a bike fitter. I don't know how, I don't, and I think
I want that certificate, Joe, on my wall.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I guess something is better than nothing, but I think real bike fitting, comes with experience. It's just one of those things where you'll never be good at it unless you've done it for a long time, because
the Andy Pruitts of the world.
Yeah. You just need, it just takes time to collect all of those tools in your toolbox, not one system is the right way and not one way is the right way. You just need a lot of different solutions for a lot of different problems, and you just don't develop all those solutions overnight, So
to be honest, that stuff changes too, just like everything else. Yeah. I'm not suggesting it changes overnight, but when you were talking a little bit earlier about how some things stay the same, I think that's true. But I also do think if you look at the tour riders, and again, I know they're like rarefied air, they're not indicative of like most people, but if you do look at them for a little bit, the trend has been saddles are moving forward.
Oh yeah.
Stems are going longer. There's more front weight, and actually shorter cranks, which has been a very interesting thing. We know about the tires going wider and lower pressure. That's a little bit separate, but in terms of the position, I'm not even sure about the geometry, because I've been out on the tour a couple of years now, but even that stuff kind of changes too. Back in the day, you and I remember the really slack geometry, like the really laid back, like you're way behind the pedals, wherever the plumb line is,
that's all.
Saddles way back. And
all out the door, yeah.
It's so different now. Yeah. So even that stuff changes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different. There's a whole different way of doing things now, as far as like positioning on the bike and all those things that we used to, learn in fitting classes is kind of out the door. Like the whole plumb bob, knee through the ball of the foot. All of that stuff is completely different now, and it's all, that's all wrong. The way that we learned that back in the day is all. By modern standards, it's all wrong, so it's, things evolve and things change. And I think that's when, when I said that I've got to update all that stuff, and I've been, watching a lot of things and talking to some fitting friends who are teachers and people that are still, have been never really left the fit side of things. And, they've given me some references, and I'll be going back to classes, like real in-depth classes this fall and winter, just to kind of get hip with that stuff, just because it's like doing the Di2. If you're not doing it day in, day out, you get it, you're never going to get good at it. And even though I have a pretty good history of it, and I know the question, the important thing is I know the questions to ask and how to work with people, and get the answers that I need so I can make the corrections that I need on the bike. And so I think that's where the advantage comes when it comes to fitting. Once you know what you got to do, once you got those tools to make those adjustments, then I think things are kind of, that part is pretty straightforward, but it's it's knowing the questions to ask the rider so that you can figure out what's going on, and sometimes they don't know how to describe it to you. So you have to, you have to learn how to pry that information from them sometimes, especially the novice rider, because he doesn't, tingling, or the maybe the way they describe it to you is sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what's causing the issue. So
right, like the difference between numbness and tingling and some of those things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and soreness. What's just well, a new rider's going to be sore because they've never ridden a bike before, right? So like
right.
You've just never been in that position before. So give it a try. Ride for a little bit, and then we'll talk. We'll get you set, we'll get you started, and we'll get you in a position where you're not going to hurt yourself. But it's normal. It's going to hurt for a little, it's going to hurt because you've never ridden a bike before. It's your first time riding 50 miles on a bike. It's going to hurt. So,
I was always amazed, Joe, when I saw people come in, certain they wanted a certain type of bike. And then they do the fitting, and then they walk out with a different type of bike. Yeah. In other words, they think they want like a road bike, and they walk out with like a classic hybrid. Because they were like, oh, like this is what I want, like visually, romantically, whatever. Like this, idealistically, they want X bike, but then they're like, oh, actually, that's horribly uncomfortable. Like, I would never ride that bike, or this is not practical, or, oh, the hybrid's perfect because I also like to stop and do my grocery shopping and ride along the lakefront for 8 miles. I don't know, like that for me was like a very visceral, like that's a real life reality check of like bike fitting, just getting people on. I know that's kind of like the edge case, but like that was always very interesting to me to see. Just that real life aspect. It's like, oh, this person wanted like basically a race bike, and they walked out with like a, $500 like hybrid, and they were like happy as a pig in shit.
Well, that's what I've always said was that's the one case where I think that the test ride is actually a valid way of figuring out what kind of bike someone should be riding. Is like that novice rider, right? That guy, the guy who doesn't know. The person who doesn't even know the difference between a road bike and a hybrid and a comfort hybrid and a mountain bike, right? And so, like, here, ride these 3 bikes, ride these 4 bikes. That for those people, a test ride is super. It is important because they don't know the difference. Now doing a test ride on 3 $5,000 bikes around a parking lot, I've never. I've never I know I have understood why you do it. It's to sell the bike. But, when the customer comes back and is like, oh, I really like this bike more than this bike, and this bike shifts better than the other bike. I'm like, they're both Ultegra bikes. They both have the exact same equipment on it. How does that one, that one's probably, the mechanic was probably off that day and didn't set it up properly, but
yeah, exactly.
But, and so you're just kind of like, as a sales guy, you're just kind of inside, you're thinking to yourself, you can, oh my God, you could not glean anything from a bike, from a ride around the block, except to convince yourself you wanted that red bike or you wanted the black bike.
Yeah, you would have to have like so many things in terms of like, you talk about scientific testing and having controls, and you'd have to have the exact same tire pressure, the same tire width.
Yeah, but I've sold
similar geometry. But to your point, though, it's amazing how people come back from riding those 3 different type of bikes. And they know instantly. They know immediately. They're just, I'm done. Like, I got, this is the bike. Like those other 2, no way. Whereas like 2 minutes ago, they were totally considering those bikes. And they're like, oh God, no, I would never ride that bike.
Yeah. Oh, that one shifts so much better. Oh, I like, I love the Cannondale. I can't, the Specialized is just, that one rides so much better.
Faster.
It's faster. It shifts so much nicer. I'm like, they both have the same exact equipment on it. I don't, but that's just that's the other part of the bike world that, I've just gotten,
it's interesting.
I've just gotten really frustrated with over, I guess I'm just finally at that point where the last 20 years where it has become all of that, and maybe try to wrangle some sense into what we're doing again, so we'll see.
Well, I hope it improves for you, Joe. You sound a little bit little bit down, and I want you to keep your spirits high. You're going to get through this, and you're going to figure out all this malarkey. And don't forget, Joe, we have the most beautiful race in the world happening right now.
It is, and I guess I'm talking about it because I am watching that as well.
Nice.
I've been paying attention to that, and so it reminds me of what a cool thing we're involved with, and that's why the effort with the electronic stuff and not wanting to say, not wanting to become that just a steel bike shop cables guy, because I do see it there. There's that part of me that, we're road guys and we're watching the tour. I love all that. I like all that cool stuff. At some point, hopefully I find myself at one of those races, and I don't want to, I want to be able to talk to the mechanic and ask him some questions about that stuff and be hip to what they're doing and what I don't want to become. I'm not ready to just be a curmudgeon-y, old bike guy who's given up on all the cool stuff. I want to stay current with it. I want to understand it. I want to make sense of it. And I want to be honest with people too. And say, you don't really need that stuff, but if you want that, certainly I'll build you a rocket ship, man. You want a rocket ship? I'll build you a rocket ship.
Yeah. You don't want to be like Rocky Balboa's coach with the wool hat and the cigar butt. You don't want to be that guy.
No, not completely. Not completely. Not completely. I still want to be able to do that modern cool. I want to be hip to all of that stuff. I don't.
Of course,
I'm not
fun.
ready. I'm not ready. Yeah, it's fun for me. It's fun. It's fun. Yeah. It's a little frustrating learning about it. It's a little frustrating getting up to speed with all of that stuff. But I think that things have, I think I have a pretty clear idea of what I want to do moving forward with some of this stuff. And as long as I can do it on my terms, I think it'd be fun.
Thanks for listening to the Bike Shop Society podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us at mail@bikeshopsociety.com. If you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you can look us up at Bike Shop Society. That's it. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Now, back to the show. Goodbye.
Speaking of the tour, Joe.
Yes, sir.
So based on what you've seen, have you enjoyed the racing this year? What do you think?
A pretty epic day today. I mean, today's racing today's stage has been called historic by people, and not since Bernardino. Bernardino lost his yellow on this same stage, and it happened to another guy today. So I mean, it was great. It was great. Like that kind of attacking racing, that kind of aggressive. Those aggressive tactics that we saw today, we don't see enough of that, year to year, and that it was fun to see, right?
Yeah. Oh, I agree 100%. It was so much fun, and what was funny is I actually signed on a little bit later than I normally do, and not super late, but I literally turned on my feed, and what I saw, like with my own eyes right on my screen, was like Jumbo Visma attacking Pogacar, and it wasn't even the final climb yet. It was the Galibier, the second to last big climb, and I believe the highest point in the tour this year. And like all these, it was Roglic and it was Vinigo and who else? It was Sepp Kuss or someone else, but whatever. It's like these three dudes all attacking Pogacar, and it was just incessant. And everyone's, like you said, everyone's talking like, wow, this is like a throwback. This feels like 1960s, 70s racing, like just like attack. And, Pogacar is responding to them all. And it was so wild and crazy. I loved it, because we were so bored. I think a lot of us with like the blue train of like U.S. Postal, and then like the iteration, if you will, later, which was like Sky and like Ineos, like just dominating with like their crazy lead riders, just riding themselves into the ground until the next rider comes up, and no one could ever really attack them. It was too fast. And anyway, so I like literally tuned into that, and it was like 57 to go or something, 57K to go or something like that. So I like jumped into the thick of the action. It was like, oh my God, this is crazy. What's happening? But as you said, historic stage, so wild and crazy. And then as we saw, we're not giving anything away because this is already coming out after the stage. But like, Pogacar losing the yellow jersey on the final climb up the Glendon. So Vinigo taking the yellow jersey from him, snatching it from him.
Yeah.
After he imploded and cracked, like his first time cracking really ever. Dominated two tours the first week of this tour. He looked invincible, and he cracked big time. And everyone knew Vinigo was really good, but I personally was wondering, does he have that real like super fierce like beast in him to fight and attack, like really, really attacking? And he did. And oh my God, that was an amazing racing. I don't know if we'll have a better stage this tour than today's.
We'll see. I mean, and I got to give Pogacar some credit, because I mean, he really took it like a man, and actually, and a
23-year-old man.
Yeah, and in good like. I really just loved his attitude. It was just like, well, bad day today, but a lot of racing left, and with a smile and just like having a good time. Like he just like he enjoyed the racing, right? And like looking forward to some more hard racing. Not crying about it, not despondent, not with his head down. More like this was fun. I took it on the chin today, but I'm gonna. Man, wait till tomorrow, or give me I'm gonna, I'm ready to come back. And at 23, young guy like that, they can recoup. It could just be a bad day, and those guys can, good night's rest for a 23-year-old might be all he needs. So it's, and so I'm looking forward to it, and it kind of endeared me to him a little bit, and he's been kind of this. I wouldn't say a robot, because he's been kind of cool. It's been kind of fun to watch him. I don't know that I was as warm to him as I am now. I mean, just kind of getting to know him a little bit better. He seems really genuine, just kind of like, hey man, I'm having a good time. I race every day. I got nothing to lose. He's like a kid out there. He really is like a kid out there.
And it's easy to forget because he is 23 and he's already won two tours. Which I had this thought in my mind as I was watching the stage. I was kind of sitting back with my coffee, and I'm like, what else does this kid have? Like, he's won 2 tours. He's won Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He won some other monument. I can't remember which one, but I mean, he's won all these other races. Like, he's 23 years old. It's like, what's left for him? It's like, does he need to win 10 tours and like be the ultimate?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I think, like you said though, like he's so young, and he reminds me of Peter Sagan. He reminds me of Sagan in that he's like, Sagan's always like, the results are results, and whether he believes that or not, but Sagan won 3 world championships and all kinds of crazy races and green jerseys, but like, Sagan, I genuinely believe was always like, sure, he likes to win, but he's like, you know what? I put on a show. I can't tell you how many races I saw Peter Sagan lose badly because he effed up some tactic or something. I mean, I could probably think of like 20 races off the top of my head, including big races. And he always just was like, I got 7th or 2nd or whatever. He's like, I had a good time. It was a show. It's entertainment. Like, that's what I felt like Pogacar was doing, like this week and today even. He's just like you said, like he's like, I lose 3 minutes today, I could gain 3 tomorrow. Like, I just feel like he's a showman, and I kind of just love that. And he's only 23.
Well, he's and he's won the tour twice already. So it's like I don't think it's not like you could tell in today's stage where like he wasn't heartbroken at all that he had lost his time. It's not like it's the end of the world for him. And so I love that. I love the fact that this is just fun for him. That this is like, he seems to just be having a genuinely good time. It's not going to be the end of the world if he doesn't win this race. And you know,
I think it could actually be his strength, because
yeah.
now he's like, I have nothing to fucking lose.
Mhm.
I've won the tour twice. I've
Yep.
got stages up the wazoo. I got all the money in the world. I'm
Uh-huh.
23 years old. Like, this team is going to sign me for 10 more years at $10 jillion. Like, I think now, actually, like, tomorrow we have Alpe d'Huez. Like, tomorrow's going to be a mythic, big,
Mhm.
crazy stage.
Yeah.
We'll almost certainly see another huge duel. But, like, I feel like it's almost like a strength. And if anything, if I was Vinigo or like some of these other cats like Bardays and Nairo, they're in the top 5. It's so cool to see the new GC. But, like, I don't know, like, I'd be actually really scared.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
If he comes back, I mean, he can unleash and grab like 5-10 minutes.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Insane.
I mean, if I were anybody else there in the top 5 or 6 who was maybe thinking about winning the tour, like I would actually be more nervous today and tonight than I was yesterday.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
who knows what this kid has up his what
Mhm.
was it, just a bad day? Is he sick? But if
Right.
if he was just tired and he's planning on going berserk over the next few days, who knows what could happen. And and you were talking about Sagan. It's a real what a difference, because they had a shot of him coming in like half an hour, 40 minutes,
Yes.
behind.
Yeah.
They showed him coming across the line, and you got this young kid, 23, and then you have Sagan at the other end of his career, right? He just kind of like
33-ish, yeah.
trying to score,
there.
trying to score that win in the sprint, where he got angry there. And you'd never seen I'm not used to seeing him angry, I mean,
Right.
And to see him like where he was angry, where obviously there was some stress there, or something. Yeah, he's feeling it. He's feeling the kind of the need, or maybe the end is coming, and he's only got so many opportunities left. And it's that's a little sad there, because we used to talk about him like we did Pogacar, right? This kind of young, bright light,
the Saganator,
mountain biker guy. This guy who was doing all this, the wheelies and all of that stuff, and now
winning everything he wanted, just whatever, willy-nilly, just like, it's for fun. I win all the time. Okay, I don't win. Who cares? Good show.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to be that guy anymore, right? I mean, at least the times that I've seen, he doesn't have that spirit anymore. And
well, I would say, I hear what you're saying. I would say, like, he's been very competitive. He's been very close. He's been in like second, third, fourth, fifth, like, or hovering, in and amongst there. I did sense that frustration for sure when he got nipped. He thought Wout came off his line. In fact, a lot of people basically, after the fact, were like, yeah, Wout lost his line a little bit. But the thing is, there was someone in front of Wout. So it's like, even though he got pushed off, he probably wasn't going to win the sprint anyway. But to your point, I do feel like, he's not like near retiring, but he's definitely in the twilight. Like, things are coming down. I think it'd be important for him to get a win. Obviously, he's obviously not going for the green jersey at this point.
Yep.
But like, I think he actually might pull out a stage win. I'm very hopeful. I love Sagan. I'm very biased. But he's a lovely guy. He's fun. He's exciting. I do feel like he's overall on a trajectory upward. And like, I'd be interested to see like what's going to happen with the rest of the year. But I'm not excluding him from winning a stage this year. But I sense what you're saying in general. I guess I just have a slightly different read. I don't see him as being like, profoundly frustrated, or just like, it's not as sad a situation. I see a little bit of that, but I feel largely he's just kind of like, he's lost his buddy Daniel Oss. He crashed out of the race earlier. They're like bosom buddies, and he's on a little different team now. It's not the same thing, but there's definitely like some challenges. But at the same time, the guy's still making big bank. He's a big name. He's a big name, and he's been up there pretty close. So as long as he can get through some of these sprint stages, I don't know. I'm hoping he gets into like a, and he's one of those guys, his form gets better and better during the tour, which not a lot of guys can say. So I don't know. I'm just hopeful that he can pull something out.
Yeah.
It's been a wild tour, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for him too. I mean, he's been great for cycling. He's just one of those characters. I guess all I'm saying is that, we are seeing we're seeing him kind of towards the end, and we're seeing this new crop of people, these really young guys started just coming up, right? And so it's not the first time we've seen it. Now we've seen this happen a few different times, but I guess you recognize it a little bit more now because you've seen it. You've seen career trajectories again. And so now we're at that. Now now we're actually talking about Sagan that way, where we're hopeful that he gets another stage win. We're kind of like Cav, right? Last year, where it was just like like last year. You almost wanted him to retire at the end of the season because how much better could it have gotten than last year for him, right? I mean,
go out high.
Like Sagan too. Like I'd love for him to score some big win now at towards the end of the season, and I would not blame him for hanging it up. In fact, I'd love to see all these guys like leave the sport healthy. Not some big crash, not something nasty, something really nasty. Like they don't need to prove anything else to me. I mean, if they're making some money, good for them. But like, I don't know that they have a lot left to prove in the sport, and I'd love for them to go out on top. Like I
agree. I did hear this. So real quick story. One thing is I have to admit, and I'm not proud to say it, but I did write Cav off a little bit before his tour last year. And I ate my words and I owned it, but I did feel a little bit like, all right, he hadn't done anything in a long time. And I felt, I've had a very ambivalent relationship with Cav as a journalist because he's been kind of a dick to journalists that he doesn't like. And so he's very temperamental, but I do respect that he's the greatest sprinter in the history of the sport. No question in my mind. And he's an amazing talent, like for sure. And he's almost got the record at the tour, but he came back and he crushed that tour last year, and he won 4 stages, tied Merckx's record. And I was sad he wasn't at this tour. I think he could have won a stage already, and I think he could have beaten Merckx's record, which I think needs to be broken. Records are made to be broken. But my point is, with Sagan, I feel like, he's had COVID 3 times. He's had a change of teams. And I know he got divorced. He had a little run-in with the law. I'm kind of a Sagan fanatic, so I follow all these things, Joe. I've read his book, and he's an interesting character. I feel like he still has a few good years left, and I know people have talked about. There's kind of this element too, like some people want to see people go out on a high note, like Jordan, like don't come back, don't play for the Wizards, that kind of thing. Don't take up baseball, please. There's always that element, but like I feel with Sagan and like Cav too, like they have so much to offer, like other riders. Like I think they can kind of maybe go out in like this grand style and have like a couple 2-3 really good seasons where they might pull out some interesting wins. Remember Sean Kelly won Milan-San Remo at like one of his last years racing. He won Milan-San Remo against Moreno Argentin. Like that, he won it twice. So that was like, I'm not saying that's going to happen to Sagan, but it could. And they just have so much to offer as like mentors and like road captains. And I don't know. It's interesting. It's a really interesting question. I definitely I feel like Sagan is definitely like moving toward the last several years of his career. But, nowadays Valverde raced till he was 40. Simon Clark just won a stage. He ran the Roubaix stage of the tour this week at age 36, I think. Luis Leon Sanchez almost won yesterday's stage at he's 39 or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just, there's a lot of dudes. Mike Wood started late. Like, there's just interesting stories where guys are still putting out. I do feel like Sagan's had COVID 3 times. And so I don't know. I again, this is totally subjective. It may not even be rational, but I do feel like I hope he can pull out a stage win. I'd love to see him do well at a couple of the late season races, whether it's like, I don't think Worlds really suits him, but maybe a couple of Vuelta stages, maybe something else.
Yeah,
No,
I think
he's such a champ, you know.
I think it would. Yeah, it would be great. It would be great. I mean, I guess I just want him to be competitive. You know, I just like I said, just that shot of him coming over the line. You know, it was just. I was like, oh man, I'm just so used to seeing him with a big smile on his face, and you know, and I saw the other riders just kind of going by him and almost like even not recognizing him, right? I mean, they were just like going by. He was coming up by himself, and like nobody gave him a fist pump or a high five, and he just kind of came over. He was all by himself, and it was just kind of a. I'm like, man, this dude was. I mean, this dude was the man. You know, I mean, he was he was so celebrated before. I mean, 10 years ago, he'd be doing a wheelie over the finish line.
You make a totally fair point. Like he's a different image of himself now, and he's not that same guy. So no, and some of those can get transfixed, like in our memory. Like we kind of like, wow, like you're this like different writer. That's what makes the sport pretty interesting too, because some of these guys can keep rolling just on their name alone. Like some teams, like his own team right now, like they're not a big team. They're probably not going to win a stage in the tour. Maybe they might win one, but if they do, it's probably what's taken. It's like they get this name. It's like the sponsors just like, okay, even if we give you 90% of our freaking budget, like it's going to be worth it for us because of the sponsorship. And
well, he brought Specialized over with him too, right? I mean, I mean, like that's the power of Peter Sagan. I mean, he brought the bike brand and everything over. His brother, right? He didn't bring his brother and his entourage, and I mean, so. Yeah, I mean, it speaks to him and speaks to who he is, and. And so business wise, I completely get it. I just, for me, it's just like, I just hope that he's still recognized that way, and that he's just not, riding himself into this place where he just becomes a miserable dude thinking about how awesome he was. You know what I mean? Like, I hope he's able to keep his. I don't. You don't
want him to be the uncle in Napoleon Dynamite, the old football quarterback.
I don't want him to be that. Like, I want people to still remember how awesome he was.
I had this great touchdown one time, senior year of high school, the last game, fourth quarter. I know what you mean. It's a fair point. But anyway, the tour has been great. Tomorrow we get Alpe d'Huez. We still have 12. Well, no, we got like 9-10 stages left to go. So have a full week, another rest day, and then the whole mountain stages still to come, and some more sprint stages. I'm very psyched. I think the racing's been insane. So good. Like I can't believe it feels like the longest tour ever. Probably because we've already had 2 rest days. That first one, which was weird after Denmark, but the racing has been wild, and it's just unbelievable. And just the GC fight now, and then the stage wins, and then the jerseys. I'm actually kind of interested in the jersey competition for once in my life. Like, usually I don't even care about them, but there's a lot of good stuff happening. It's really fun, and France is beautiful, and I don't know. It's just been really cool, and it's a great time of year.
I've had quite the Euro 10 days start to July between the Tour de France and the running of the bulls in Pamplona started on the 7th of July.
Okay.
And they do that for a week straight. So every day there's a running of the bulls. So we've been, that's on the television here in the house. We're watching an hour's worth of coverage every day of that as well. So between the tour and Pamplona coverage, I mean, it's wall to wall, Europe in the house these days.
And so how do you watch that? Do you have like a feed or what?
You can actually watch it on the Spanish television app if you've got a smart television. So if you get it's RTVE. There's an app, and if you go there, not everything is available because a lot of it is geo-blocked, but you can watch a recap of the running of the bulls every day. They cover it like a sporting event. So it's an hour of coverage. It starts an hour before the actual running of the bulls, and they cover. You find out which bulls are running, the names of the bulls, the weight of the bulls. who the breeder of the bulls are. They interview some of the runners.
What is PETA saying about
this is you know what? They I don't think.
Did you see Ricky Gervais's tweet about the running of the bulls?
No, I didn't.
So he was quote tweeting, an article on whatever major news site, but it was like 20 injured like in running the bulls, and he wrote something like, "Good, stupid cunts," like something, which is very Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
But anyway, without going there, but that's interesting. I've been to Pamplona, but I didn't go during the running of bulls. I went when there was no running of the bulls, and I had a lovely 24 hours. But so you guys are watching that? Okay, is that like? I mean, this is a dumb question, but like, is everyone in Spain into that, or is it kind of a dying sport? No pun intended.
Well,
what's going on with it.
So I'm not watching the bullfights because I think I find the bullfights pretty brutal. They
are,
and they are. I mean, it's a brutal thing, and
there's no way around it, right?
Yeah, no, it's I get it, and some people find it beautiful, and they think that it's an honorable way for the bull to die, and all of that. I don't get involved with all of that. I just kind of find it to be a pretty brutal thing. But and so I'm torn because I do enjoy I do enjoy the running of the bulls. I really do enjoy the whole circus around it, and just kind of the tradition and Hemingway, and there's some people that really do live it, and it's hard to deny their spirit and the reason why they do it, and these personal and family traditions, and yes, there's a lot of drunk people there, and there are a lot of tourists,
Americans,
a lot of Americans, and not only Americans, but everybody, from around the world. I mean, because they interview them. So during this pre-show, they're interviewing from people from around the world, and they're doing interviews with people from Japan, and you name it, every corner of the world, there's somebody out there doing it. Not to mention like the financial, the just what it does for that town. The population of that town like goes up 5 or 6 times what the normal population is during the running of the bulls, and so people making their living off of it, and the prestige of the town, and the only reason why people know about Pamplona, right?
Right.
So I mean, there is certainly some benefit to it when it comes to the townspeople and them being able to stay alive and make a living and live from all of this. But it's quite the spectacle. It's quite the doing
yes,
it, and the people that do it, man. The actual people that run, it's they're running. It's running with the bulls. So the people that actually do it properly, they're not running from the bulls. They're not running away from the bulls. They're not watching the bulls run by. They are, the actual intent is to run with the bulls. There's an actual, there's an actual running. There's an actual way you do it. And so once you understand what they're trying to do, it's kind of amazing to watch these guys, do what they do. They really do put themselves in harm's way to try to do these, to try to do it and do it properly, right? To do what they call getting a nice run in.
Yeah, is it like the Isle of Man TT, the motocross in the Isle of Man? Is it like pretty much a given that you're going to lose a couple souls each year? Like there are going to be a few people who die, or is it pretty rare that someone actually dies with the running of the bulls?
There hasn't been a death this year, and there hasn't been anything really bad as far as like there have been a couple of people that have been hurt by the bulls, like the actual horns of the bulls.
Jesus.
There's been a few. Nothing deadly, some legs and some thighs and buttocks, and but some of the biggest injuries come from being trampled by other people and falls.
I can see that.
I mean, there's some horrible falls. A lot of broken legs and arms, and people like with head injuries, and because some of these falls are, one guy goes, all of a sudden there's a pile of people, and it's a cobble, it's a cobbled street. So, you're not falling in the park. You're falling, on grass. You're falling on a hard cobbled surface. And so that to me is probably the scariest part of it. Besides the bulls coming at you, the 1,000-pound bull.
I was going to say.
But
besides that,
you've got hordes of people coming at you and coming behind you, and so it's pretty crazy. So
it's a thing.
It is
and
a thing.
Joe, this is only a podcast where folks might hear two people from Chicago talking in depth with great nuance and detail about bike racing and the inner workings of bike shops and high technology with road bikes and the running of the bulls.
Yes, you don't get that everywhere.
I mean, name one podcast. Come on,
name one. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I'm psyched. I can't wait for the rest of the tour. Much more to talk about, but we're out of time. But this has been really fun, Joe. It was great catching up with you. And namaste and best of luck to the bulls and best of luck to Vinigo, and best of luck to your bike shop exploits.
Yeah, it's cycling. That's Cycling Reporter on Twitter. Check that out. Cycling Reporter at Cycling Reporter on Twitter.
If you dare.
Oh, look out!
If you got like 7 espressos lined up.
There you go. All right, Danny. Talk to you later.
All right, Joe.
Adios.
Oh, okay. Jose.